Hi there, welcome to kneppyinvests. A few weeks ago, I was listening to the podcast featuring Emma Fisher from Airlie Asset Management, and she became very excited about this one company called PWR Holdings. And her excitement, her enthusiasm really rubbed off on me in a very positive way. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about this company because what she talked about did excite me to a little extent. Then lo and behold, a few days later, I was watching the call on Ausbiz, and this company was brought up. The two experts, or the panel for that day, weren't quite as enthusiastic about PWR than Emma Fisher was. That did not, however, dissuade me from doing a little bit of research or wanting to do a little bit of research on this company. So I thought, if I'm going to do a little bit of research, I'm going to show you through this video the steps I take to start a bit of research on a company I know very little about. This will be part one of a two-part series. In this part one, I'll just show you how I start this research, the websites I use, and then in part two, I'll show you the results of that research. So let's get stuck into it, and I'll just show you the websites I use to research a company. The four websites I do use are CommSec. I've been using this site for about 10 years or so. However, I'm finding I'm using it less and less. I do use it every single day for one simple reason, and that is to look at announcements that companies release on a daily basis. I use GuruFocus. I simply use that for historical financial data. I do have to pay the privilege to use that website. Also use TradingView. And TradingView simply because of the charting function. And then the next company I use, I've only discovered recently, and that is Ticker, T-I-K-R. I'll just sign in right now. And typically when I start researching a company, I want to know what a company does. A very easy way to find that is to go to the company's website because they should have something on there about what the company does. Another good way is just to go to like Ticker, CommSec, even TradingView. In those websites, they will have a summary of what a company does. But the ticker code for PWR Holdings is not PWR, it's actually PWH because PWR is the ticker code for Peter Allen Automotive. So this is going to confuse me for a long time. In Ticker, the first thing you'll see is the chart on top. I don't like the chart function yet in Ticker. I haven't really explored it all that much, so I just want to hide that. In the overview of the company, you'll see a very convoluted explanation of what a company does. Right down the bottom, it's headquartered in Ormo, was founded in 1987. So it's been around for 33 years. But the main reason I use Ticker is there is a link to the website right here. So that's useful. You just Google it also. I always like to go to a company's website. The quality of a company's website is quite important to me. If there's lacking quality, that is a red sign for me. It shows you the company is not interested in marketing themselves. In the company's website, there should be a lot of things you could look at. For instance, the About, so you can just see what a company does in the About section. Already know they're located in Ormo, which is just south of Brisbane, about 30-40 minutes south, near Yatala, which has famous pies. That is confirmed with their phone number here. Another thing I want to know is the products. So I do know they're into cooling technology, mostly for cars, F1s, and other stuff like that. So they have radiators, intercoolers, oil coolers, and accessories. What industries do they serve? Racing, aftermarket, military, 4W drive or four-wheel drive and off-road, custom OEM and industrial, so all automotives it seems there. And typically for any company listed on the ASX, they should have an investors part here. And in the investors section, you should be able to see who was on the board. For instance, Keys Will is the CEO and managing director. I wonder if he's the founder potentially. It doesn't say he is the founder. It doesn't say he's been around since 1987. So you can just read about the board, the management, you can see what's happening with the share price, the announcements the company releases. Most of that information I prefer to use other websites like CommSec. So let's have a look at what CommSec can show us. Now, I'm doing this video just after open. XCO is up 0.29%. PWH. Now, some people solely use CommSec for their information on a company. So right down the bottom here in the summary section, they will have market cap. So PWH market cap, or PWR, has a market cap of 681 million. You do have to view that with a grain of salt. And a perfect example of this is 66C, Copper Mountain, via CommSec, or CommSec says, the market cap of C or Copper Mountain is only 70 million. That's completely rubbish. They have something like 220 million shares on issue. And with 220 million shares on issue with a share price of $4.18, that means the market cap of Copper Mountain is over 800 million, well above the market cap of 70 million that CommSec shows you. So I don't like to use CommSec for some of that information because I've found over time it can be unreliable. One reason I do like to use CommSec is the announcements. So a couple of reasons I like to use this is the announcements for individual companies. But if I go to tools, I just open up new tab here. This is what I use every single day is company announcements. I get rid of the company. I just go, and I like to see all the market sensitive announcements that have been released to the market on every single day. So we can see Boral Limited has had a takeover bid. And that's the last 4 market sensitive announcements that have been released today to about midday. So I'm doing this video just after midday, and I love just to go through this every single day to see all the price sensitive announcements released to the market. This is the best way that I have found to do this. No other website has this ability to do this. Maybe Westpac, maybe NAB, but I've been using CommSec for 10 years and I'll continue to use it as long as I have this functionality in there. However, that's not the reason for this video. I go to any individual company and I like to see the individual announcement that company has released over the past year or so. And I really want to focus on market sensitive announcements. And the last price market sensitive announcement that PWR has released was the half yearly report on the 19th of February. So they've gone 4 months without a price sensitive announcement. That's not a bad thing. The other things I like to look at is change in substantial holding. So a fund manager has either bought more or sold, or change in director's interest. So Keys will either bought some shares or sold some shares. We can click on that and see if he sold some shares, which could be important to some people. It may not be important to others. For me, it's not important. And just mentioned here, entity associated with Keyswill, founder and manager. So we just found out here that Keyswill is the founder of PWR, so that's very important, has sold 2 million shares. Now, that for some people, that is a red flag. For me, it's not. We've seen in the past that the founder and CEOs of a company can sell some shares, and then the share price of a company will explode after that. It happened to Blackmores about 6 or 7 years ago. It happens all the time. So anyway, first thing I really want to look at is the last financial report a company has released, and for PWR, that was the half-year report and accounts on the 19th of February. So I'll just open this up. Also open up the presentation that's complemented that release. The reason most companies release a presentation that coincides with the release of the financial report is it's much easier to read, and maybe some lazy people will like to or prefer to read it. I sometimes do prefer to read it as well, because the half-year report can be very dry, or the yearly report can be very dry, and sometimes you might just fall asleep. I'll just zoom in here. The first thing I'll always look at here is not the financial numbers up the top there, but is the director, right here on page 2, is the directors of the company. You can see Key Cornelius Will has been a director since 2003. And the other 4 or 3 directors have been in the company for between 4 and 6 years. So the management team of PWR Holdings is quite stable, and that is important to me. I do like to see some stability in a company when it comes to management. You don't want to see high turnover rates. That's a bad sign. Then in the operating financial review, just below that, you'll see how the company is performing operationally. We know through this that during the COVID-19 period, they did receive $1.9 million in JobKeeper, and that finished, or they were eligible for JobKeeper until the 30th of September 2020. And then they talk about revenue, EBITDA, and operating cash flow. Under the revenue bit here, they also talk about, and I find this very important, where's their revenue growth coming from, particularly the organic revenue growth. For me, that's very important. They actually mention that organic revenue growth was driven primarily from emerging technologies and OEM sales. So even though they are more renowned because of their F1 racing, they provide cooling technologies for F1 racing, they are getting most of their organic growth through emerging technologies and OEM. They talk about EBITDA. They also talk about operating cash flow, which is very important for me. That's one of my favorite things to look at for a company and the growth of a company. So let's go now to the financial statements. Always look at the financial statements no matter what. Unfortunately, in the half yearly, it's not that far down. In our yearly report, yearly report is much larger, and you have to actually go searching for the financial statements. Always look at the revenue. Is there revenue growth? And for PWR, it is growing from 30 million to 37 million. That's the main thing I look at for the first bit. In the statement of financial position here, assets, I want to know if the cash has grown or gone backwards. So they have lost cash through the half year, or the half year, from 20.8 to 16.8. We can look at the operating cash flow or the cash flow statement to see why that has gone down. The other thing I like to look at here is borrowings. Do they have much borrowings? They don't. No current liabilities when it comes to borrowings, that's 0. And non-current loans is at 3.5 million. And we can see that's actually gone down 5 million. So maybe that's one of the reasons why cash has gone back. They've repaid some borrowings. Last thing I like to look at here just is the total equity. Is that growing? It has grown very slowly from year on year. Or actually, it's half year on year, isn't it? Yeah, half year on year. It's only grown by just over 1 million in the last half year. And the last thing I always look at is the cash flow statement. It is my favorite part of the financial statements. And the first thing I always look at is whether the company is operational cash flow positive or negative. Last year, they were only positive by 2.9 million. And even though they're only positive by 2.9 million, they spent $4.4 million in capital expenditure, and they paid $9.9 million in dividends. And that actually would have been a red flag for me personally. And they lost cash. In fact, the cash went from 20 million to 7.8 million. However, this year, things are a little bit better in the operations. Cash flow from operations was at 14.3 million. And even though the operational cash flow positive by 14.3 million, they're able to use that money and pay $4 million in dividends and repay $5 million in borrowings. And that's the reason why the cash fell during the year, was because of dividends and the repayment of borrowings. If they didn't repay borrowings, they actually would have grown cash through the half year. So that's it for the half yearly. That's all I really want to look at. Sometimes I will look at the notes, but for this instance, I won't, because that will become a little bit too boring for you potentially. The next thing I usually do is look at the presentation. Maybe there's something in the presentation that I missed in the half yearly report. Everything here should be nice and pretty to read, because this is what the management want people to read. What I want to focus on here is this revenue on page 6. I want to see how the different segments of the company or the categories are increasing when it comes to the revenue. So I'll just zoom in here. So they have motorsports, automotive aftermarket, emerging technologies, OEM, and industrial and other. I'll ignore industrial and other because that's very low. Motorsports is growing at 14%, going from 16 million to 18 million. They talked about how emerging technologies was growing quite quickly. That's grown 72% from 2.7 million to 4.6. In fact, Emma Fisher said management expect emerging technologies to become the biggest category or segment in a few years, and that's quite exciting, because that means there's going to be significant growth in that area, because motorsport is still growing, and OEM grew at 40% over the last year, from 4.7 to 6.6 million. So it does look like there's pretty good growth in the company, because all their segments are growing. That's quite exciting for this company. Sometimes a company will talk about some sort of a business outlook. So they talk about business outlook here. No financial numbers. I would prefer financial numbers here, but they do talk about their emerging technologies. And when I go through these emerging technologies, it all goes over my head. So I'd have to do a lot more research on what all this means. Cold plates, micro matrix, hydrogen fuel cell heat exchangers, bar and plate applications, battery and hybrid system cooling, additive manufacturing applications, computational fluid dynamics, simulation and modeling services, super alloy brazing capabilities. The reason why I want to do more research on that is because this is where the growth of the company is supposedly going to happen over the next few years. So it's very important for this company and the growth of this company moving forward. The last thing I usually look at for a company, I know very little about, is the chart. In CommSec, I do like the charting in CommSec, but I'm starting to use this less and less. I just want to see what's happening with the sentiment in this company over the past 6 months. So I go straight to a 6-month chart, and we can see the sentiment in PWR is quite positive. In fact, there was a breakout in the share price on the 19th of February, the day they released the half yearly. So the market loved their half year report, and the share price has moved into uptrend ever since then. So you can see why sometimes I look for breakout when a company releases a financial report. This is a perfect example of a breakout in a share price. I just wish I was paying attention to this company at this point in time. The next thing I want to look at is the financial history of a company. And I've usually, in the past, I've used GuruFocus for this. I do have to pay, so I am a premium member, and I'll just put in the tick code for PWR Holdings. Now, the reason I like to use GuruFocus is because with their financial section, so they've got a summary, just like all the other websites have. You might be able to see what the company does here, maybe somewhere. I don't really use GuruFocus for this. Yes, they do have a summary section right down the bottom, but I mostly use GuruFocus for their 30-year financials. So if a company has existed for 30 years, 40 years, they will have the history, the financial history of that company. However, their standard view for their financials is well, it's quite expansive. There's a lot of financial numbers here, financial data, and that's just way too much for me to really get any sort of useful information. But they have the capabilities for you to set up your own default for those financial numbers you really want to look at, and I've called that Excel. So I've just sort of filtered to what I only want to look at, and the main reason I like GuruFocus is I can export all these numbers to an Excel file, which I've already done. And this is the output. Well, it's not exactly the output because it takes about 15 minutes for me to export the file and then manipulate it into an easy to read format for me, and then to create a graph like this. The reason I like to create graphs like this is I'm more of a visual person. I take more away from graphs than I do just looking at numbers or group of numbers. Anyway, I'll probably show you this graph in the video I do, the end result video, which I'll provide or release in the next few days. So that's GuruFocus. However, what I've discovered with Ticker, T-I-K-R, may supplant GuruFocus in the future. So let's go to Ticker. This is Ticker. Discovered this a few days ago, actually a few weeks ago. And then over the last few days, I've really found some very useful aspects of this website that I might take use of in the next few days and learn a little bit more. Let's go to the financial section because this is the reason why it might supplant GuruFocus in the future. I noticed there was this chart data little tab up here, and it just says click on row in table below to chart, which was exciting to me because this means there is chart capabilities when you look at financials. However, I wanted to look at semi-annual. You can look at quarterly, but that's for American companies because they report quarterly. But I wanted to look at semi-annual for PWR because that's what I did with GuruFocus. And you can look at the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement. So for instance, revenue, just wanted to say, oh, there's the revenue. Now it's quite small, and you can, however, look at the full screen version. There it is, the full screen version. This is very exciting. The other next thing I wanted to see is if you combine different metrics in the one graph. So right down the bottom, you've got EBITDA. Can we combine? Yes, we can. Look at that. We can combine different metrics in the one graph. That's very important to me. And we can see that overall, there is growth in both these metrics. However, there is seasonality around PWR revenue and EBITDA. And then the next thing I wanted to see is both of those, revenue and EBITDA, are in the income statement. Can we include stuff in the cash flow statement, like cash flow from operations, in the same graph? And we can. So that's the next step for Ticker to be supplanting GuruFocus. So those are the three things. Revenue, actually I didn't really include EBITDA. So I included revenue, operating cash flow, and EBITDA, which was profit in GuruFocus in the one graph. The other thing I included in GuruFocus was market cap. I haven't quite figured out if I can include market cap to this chart. If I can, that would mean I wouldn't have any use for GuruFocus in the future, because doing this in Ticker would save me a lot of time, and that's very important moving forward. There's a few other things in Ticker that I do quite like. I really haven't looked at valuation, estimates. Transcripts is very exciting as well. So you can go to the earnings call for PWR when they release the half yearly and just read what that earnings call, So trying to open this up. So you can read this earnings call. They have a transcript of it. I don't know any other website that provides this. I could be completely wrong. So this is exciting. The fact that you can read transcripts of earnings call or any other thing there. They have filings, which is sort of announcements, and the ownership is the last exciting thing here. In the ownership section, we can see who the largest shareholders of a company are. For PWR, that is Keys Cornelius Will. He owns 20.3% of the company, which equates to $105 million worth in American dollars. I think with Ticker, you can change the currency from American to Australian if you want. You can also see the other shareholders of a company. Second largest shareholder of PWR is Perpetual Investment Management, and the third largest is Perennial Value. You can see if Keys Cornelius Will is selling or buying shares. That is in the insider transactions part right here. And if you click on that, it'll show you that Keys Cornelius Will has been selling shares over the past about 8 months or so. But that's not an issue for me, because he is still a significant shareholder of the company, and he has the right to take profits, to buy a yacht, to buy a mansion, that sort of thing. He definitely has a right, and it should not be a concern. It's not a concern to me. A really exciting thing I discovered with Ticker is if you click on any of these fund managers like Perpetual Investment Management, you can see the other companies they hold in their fund. So for example, Perpetual Investment Management holds Crown Resorts. Crown Resorts is 9% of their fund. Aluka Resources is 7.6% of their fund, and Boral is 5.9%. So it seems like Perpetual Investment Management have a lot of large cap companies in their fund. On the other hand, Perennial Value Management, which is the third largest holder of PWR, have a lot of smaller, medium-sized cap companies in their fund, like Calix, Booktopia, Redbubble, Limeade, 4D Medical, Emeco, Frontier Digital Ventures. Although, in saying that, the largest holding is Woolworths Group. And you can just go on and on. I love this about Ticker. For instance, one of the shareholders in PWR is American Century Investment Management. And I clicked on this last night just to see what sort of companies they hold in their fund. And they just hold all the biggest companies in the world, like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet. They just look what the biggest companies are in the world, and we've decided to own. And within their fund, they also own PWR. And that's quite exciting. The very fact that PWR is on the radar of these sort of fund managers is a good sign for the company. The last thing I always like to do when researching these companies is just to look at the chart, particularly the long-term chart. We've already seen the 6-month chart through CommSec. So this is TradingView. I do have a trial with TradingView right now that is only going to be lasting another 6 days, 19 hours and 50 minutes. They have offered me an early bird offer with a savings of 40% if I sign up soonish or before this trial time ends. More than likely will sign up to TradingView. Currently, I am using ProTA, which is a Mac software package. In trialing TradingView, I do prefer this web service or web-based service. So more than likely, I will start using TradingView and not use ProTA. So let's look at the PWR chart. I won't spend much time on this because I will be showing you the company's chart in the next video I do. Just wanted to show you what I look at in TradingView. So it just goes to the most recent chart I did look at. So whatever I looked at last, it was a daily chart. Actually, this is the weekly chart. So it was a weekly chart, whatever I looked at last, which is perfect for this example because I wanted to look at the weekly chart for PWR since they listed on the ASX in late 2015. Mostly good news here. Share price has increased through that time period. You do get a short-term negative sentiment. We saw that in late 2016 when the share price fell 33%. We also saw it during the COVID-19 financial panic when the share price fell by over 50%. Otherwise, the share price has been going up, and we have seen over the past past year and a bit that the share price has increased quite a bit, in particular since that breakout in the share price when they released the half-year results when was that? In 19th of February. That is all I have on this video, how I begin the research process in the company I know very little about. This is not the end of the process. If I like a company more and more, I'll continue researching the company. I'll look for things like who are the competitors in PWR? Are they growing at a greater rate than this company? And questions like, what about electric vehicles because they won't need or they don't need cooling technologies? Is that a threat to PWR? And how long does PWR have to hold on to that technology before electric vehicles become a dominant force? However, it looks like their emerging technologies is where they're growing the most. And you want to do a little bit, or I would want to do a little bit more research on those emerging technologies because the stuff I did read, most of that just went right over my head. So you want to learn a little bit more about that, in my opinion. So if you do have any questions about this company or any other company or how I research a company, leave it in the comment section of this video and I'll answer anything you have to ask me or say. And don't forget, episode 2 of this video series will be released in the next few days, and that is the end result of this initial research on PWR Holdings. Have a good day. Talk to you later. Probably the last thing I should mention is I'm not a financial advisor, so if you do need financial advice, make sure you seek out someone who is qualified and can speak to your own financial needs. That's it for this video. Have a good day. See ya.